Hello, everyone. My name is Umesh Lakshman, the host and creator of Breaking Boundaries. Before we begin, I wanted to take a moment and thank you for choosing to tune in to this program, either on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. With the plethora of options out there, my goal is to make this a valuable, insightful, and thought-provoking use of your time. You can find more information about both me and the program at www.breakingboundariesonline.com. If you know anyone who would like to be part of this program, or if you'd like to be featured on this podcast, please drop me an email to Umesh, U-M-E-S-H, at breakingboundariesonline.com. The goal of Breaking Boundaries as a platform is to interview everyday heroes to share their learnings, their struggles, and the wins in the search for a more inclusive and diverse landscape, both within and outside of the workplace. Each of them have transcended stereotypes and have created something not only for themselves, but also for others. So without further ado, welcome to Breaking Boundaries. Again, thank you for joining us, Claudia. So for those of you who are listening, Claudia Santamaria is going to be the guest for the second episode of Breaking Boundaries. And a little bit about Claudia. Claudia is the lawyer in charge of Cisco Mexico for the past 7 years. She's the current leader of Women of Cisco Mexico and Community Impact at Mexico. On a personal note, she's a wife, she's a housewife, and the mother to two beautiful twins, 3.5 years old. So, and she does it all with a beautiful smile. So we applaud her for being able to keep everything together and still doing all of this work. So thank you for joining us on the show today, Claudia.
Thanks to you, Umesh. Thanks, Tanya.
And the co-host today, again, is nobody who needs an introduction, Tanya Escobar. She did the co-host role for the prior recording as well. She is the global lead for Men for Inclusion.
Everyone.
And with that said, kind of going to start it all off, right? So, Claudia, we'd love to know your journey, right, at a very high level, where it all started for you. I know you've done a lot of work around Women of Cisco. You've been in a domain which is also a little bit on the masculine side of the house, right, as a lawyer. So it'll be great to kind of just get, where did it all start? What triggered you to even get into legal, right? Some of the history growing up, and then we can maybe dovetail into different aspects.
Sure, thanks, Umesh. Well, my father, he was in the army, actually. He was a very strict guy, very according to the rules, what needs to be done, right? So I grew up with that image in my mind. So I decided to be a lawyer because of that, because I love justice. I love to do the right thing almost all the time. At this point of my life, it's almost all the time. But I enjoy a lot of that, so I decided to be a lawyer to get justice for everybody, for the persons that cannot have that justice. Then, when I started my career, I decided that corporate law was much more like myself, not the criminal one, because it's very hard, especially in Mexico. So I decided to follow this corporate path. And as you mentioned, as a lawyer, it's a masculine world, actually, still now. There's a lot of women lawyers, but until now, it's more masculine. So my entire career life has been through telecommunications, which I love. And I have been working in that since a long time ago. I'm not going to say my age. But I have a small space working within the logistics industry, which I didn't like, I have to say, because if telecommunications is masculine, logistics, you cannot imagine. I mean, there were only two director women, and it was very, very hard because all the customers, all the providers, they were men. I'm not complaining, I love men for sure, but it's a very, very hard world, actually, because they treat you sometimes like with no respect. They do not respect your opinion. They think you are sometimes like a piece of meat. I have to recognize that I felt that way so many times. at that role. So I decided to leave because I didn't like that at all. So when I joined Cisco, it was the first time in my professional life that I discovered a company that truly respect and truly incentive all these values about inclusion, about diversity, about, for example, women of Cisco, etc., etc. So I love that because it was so new for me, right? To be treated part of this community. Even when I have some issues when I started Cisco, and I want to share this with you because when I was in the interviews to join Cisco, I had I received a specific comment from one of my interviewers. Now it's my friend. He's a very close friend of mine, but at that time we didn't know each other. And he told me, you don't need to be concerned about if you are going to join Cisco or not, because if you are competing against a man, you are going to obtain the role. And I say, like, why? Right? I mean, if we are in equal conditions. And he told me, because you're a woman, and Cisco is looking to increase the woman quotation. So I'm very expressive with my face, and I was like, really? I was so upset because of that comment. And he told me, yes, and because you look you are very tall, you are pretty, so you have those kind of advantage. I was, you cannot believe me, I was like, oh, good to know. However, I'm positive and sure that if I'm going to join Cisco, it's because of my professional skills, not because I'm tall or a woman or I'm pretty or whatever, right? He was very ashamed at that time. He was like, no, no, please don't misunderstand this, etc., etc. But he said that. So I decided to take this in a positive way because I like to be sure about myself and about who am I. So I decided that if I was picked for this role, it was only because of my professional skills. And I still, at this point, 7 years later, I think that was the right positive thinking I had at that time.
So I have a follow-up question there, and it's not a question, but more of a comment to everybody who's listening. So when you and I spoke last week, Claudia, you mentioned this very clearly, and I'm looking at my notes. You said, I don't want to be hired because I'm a woman who's tall and pretty, and I don't want to be judged for stereotypes. And I thought that was very powerful. The other thing I did, you immediately followed that up with, I want to be hired because of my professional skills and because I'm intelligent, I'm powerful, and I'm a leader. Right. And both very strong statements. How much of that one incident, right, really pivoted the way you thought about a lot of other things down the road?
It pivoted a lot, actually, because I felt the necessity to prove at that time that I was hired because of that, what you mentioned, because I'm powerful, because I know to do my job very well, because I'm sure that I perform my role in a very good way, because that's why I'm still here, and I have the respect of the directors I work with, my internal customers, the external customers. I have very good relations internally and with our customers, with the customer lawyers. So for me, it was like a change in my mind about, okay, maybe I haven't received that comment that directly before, but it's always there, right? Because you're tall, because you think you're pretty, etc. You have more advantage, and that is not true. I let me tell you that I have never used my weight or my height or whatever to obtain something. Never in my life, because I always prefer this compliment, like you're intelligent instead of you're pretty. I prefer to be judged as intelligent as pretty, right? Because that lasts forever. So but yes, that helped me a lot to understand where I was and how I wanted to other people, and especially other women, to be treated like, right? To be respected and to have a place in the company, in their own areas, etc., because of their skills, not because of their looks.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
Because Claudia, you mentioned that now you have a good relationship with this person, right? And you're now at that point of friendship. But I know when I've had experiences hearing comments like that, does a couple things. One, fuels the fire, like you said, makes you want to prove, your skills and competency. which can be a good thing. But on the other hand, it also can build a wall between you and the person, right? So how did that person who said that comment make things right or show, a growth and a learning so that you could get to the place of friendship, and being amicable with each other? Because sometimes people get caught into that mistake and then, okay, where do
Hmm.
we
Actually, he's a very mature guy. And when after I was hired, we have an informal lunch of the director's staff in
next?
Mexico, like 2 or 3 months later after I was hired. And he told me, congratulations that you're here. And
Mm,
I want to apologize with you because I saw your face. I saw the way you looked at me and the
mm,
interview. And you were looking at me like, I cannot believe you're saying that, right?
mm,
So I was very ashamed of what I said to you because I know you have a lot of skills, professional skills, etc.,
mm,
etc. And I have to say, yes, you were so out of line. So I was so surprised because of your comment, because as I mentioned to Mesh, I'm very open, I'm very direct. It
right.
may be taken sometimes like aggressive, I'm not, but I want to say what I want to say, right?
Hmm.
If I need to be firm, I'm firm, and that's
Right.
it. I'm not apologizing because I'm firm or because I said something that was needed to be said. So I
Mm,
said to him, yes, you were out of line. I was so surprised because of your comment, but I'm glad that you apologized.
mm,
Apologize taken. So we can be friends now.
right.
And then we started to work together in a lot of important projects. And he
Okay.
told me once, I respect you so much because you are very firm, because you know how to communicate yourself,
Mm,
because you know what you're doing, right? Because we
mm,
closed a very important deal. So when I gained his respect, I was like, yes, I know
mm,
it because that's why I'm here, right? Not because if I
right.
talk or whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that point of acknowledgement is so important, right? You cannot build the bridge to, like you said, that respect or being able to collaborate together without that honoring what happened. So I'm very glad to hear that you were honest about that, and he accepted that as a learning and a teaching moment. So
Yeah.
And you're right, Tanya, and just to finish this, because I would never respect somebody that doesn't respect me.
mm,
I need to feel the respect of the other party to respect him. I would never respect somebody that looks at me like a piece of meat, right? Or because
right.
I'm a woman and I'm tall or whatever. I would
Yeah.
never could have that a connection.
Mm,
I one quick comment I want to take and maybe make it for everybody who's listening is it is okay to call out something that is happening that is wrong as long as it is respectful. And I think that's kind of what you're highlighting here is you don't know what you don't know. So sometimes people don't know the mistakes they're making until somebody actually calls shit out.
mm,
Right? That's the easiest way to say it. Everybody on this call has made a mistake that we didn't know we were making till somebody called it out. So it's something, especially in when it comes to diversity and inclusion. I love the fact that the story is about somebody making a mistake, acknowledging a mistake, but
mm.
also alongside you calling out the mistake, because all three things need to happen for it to work. I love that one of the kids is also screaming at the same time for me. Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's
No,
completely
that's
fine. This
great.
is 2020. This is exactly how it's
Real
supposed
life.
to be.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good plugin for Babel Labs integration, right? To remove all the background noise.
Yep, can't wait for that.
Yeah. Cool, awesome. I'm actually gonna if you don't mind, Tanya, I'm gonna take the next question here,
Yeah.
which is the you talked about. Okay, that was a very defining moment, and there was also another external factor we talked about where you came into Cisco, you came into a domain where you saw the need for a women of Cisco kind of component to exist in Latin America and literally spearheaded that and started it. So, can you give us more around what started all of that for you?
Yeah, well, it's more like Women of Cisco Mexico. There was also Women of Cisco Mexico, and I joined because I love to support other women. And as mentioned to
Mm,
you, in order to support somebody else, and especially a woman, you don't need to like her. You don't need to be her friend. You just need to be a woman as well and to understand our positions, right? Where
mm,
are we here? in this telecommunication world. So I decided to join because I like to be part of that community. And then when the current leader at that time left to lead Women of Cisco Latam, I was invited to take this role as the leader of Women of Cisco Mexico. And I was thrilled about it because there are so much things to do. You never stop to learn and to create and to innovate how many activities and how many things to involve other women and also men, right? So I decided to have a twist here to implement new activities like having this executive breakfast with our executives, men and women, and to have like a small amount of invited women in order to provide them this visibility, this honest chat, right? How our executives looks at the women of Cisco. Not only because we are like this, hi, they are so nice, they are meeting every 3 months, and hi, that's great.
Right.
No, because we wanted to be taken serious. I mean, we want to have sponsors, we want to have our executive support, we want them to be actually involved, not only talking, but doing, right? To have more, for example, women involved with them, to have this executive shadowing, this sponsoring, etc. So many initiatives, real initiatives, to have deliverables for our members, to have for them, again, something that they say, I love this, I like it, I want to embrace this, I want more of this. How can I be seen? We launched a program these past months, and it's about growing yourself, not only professionally, but personally, right? Emotional intelligence, your image, your brand, how do you see yourself, how do you sell yourself inside the company, how other people looks at you, right? Because sometimes we have our image, but the people look so much different to yourself. So we are trying to work on that because I think that it's very important that you have conscience of yourself. So,
Sorry, as I was getting out of mute there and trying to figure out my own WebEx for today. So there was one comment you made when we spoke, which was around women in executive roles in Latin America in itself, right? Was very minimum when you came into the ecosystem, right? And when you joined Cisco. How much has that landscape changed?
I think it has changed, not that much, but it has changed for sure. We have so much more women leaders, and they are very involved as well about growing other women. So I'm very proud of that because that has changed. Maybe not as fast as it may should be, right?
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
has changed. So
yeah.
I think for all of the women at Latam, they see like an opportunity, right? Because when I joined Cisco, I think the opportunities were like this, and now we are feeling like this. So it's
Great.
growing, right?
Yeah.
That's great.
The when you're talking about opportunity in general and access to leadership, one thing you mentioned just now is to go from talking about it to doing something about it. And that's literally where kind of men for inclusion fits a lot, right? Is we are trying to take, and to quote Tanya here, we're trying to take the dominant group, in this case, men, right? To take a new angle at what needs to be actually balanced, right? And give them a toolkit to actually drive better inclusive culture, drive more diversity on a day-to-day basis at all levels, right? The common challenge we see is leaders get it. Like top line leaders get it, right? They say diversity is important, inclusion is important. This is policy. Frontline leaders don't know what to do with that. They're like, okay, I'm great that my boss is telling me this. I agree, but I don't know how to put it to work. Right. So, what are some of the things that you've seen over the last? I mean, like you've been in Cisco now 7 years. So, over the last 7 years, leaders that do something well, right, when it comes to changing the diversity story in general.
Yes, as mentioned to you, Umesh, the last time we spoke, I think, and you mentioned it already, you need to be honest and very genuine about this. Not only
Mm-hmm.
speaking with your team and with the women of your team, you are like treating them different, right? You need
Mm,
to be authentic, you need to be aligned with what you're saying and what you're doing. So for me, it's not doing big stuff. There's not like I'm going to have you like and to give you a raise and to
mm,
have you promoted. No,
mm,
if you do not deserve it, you have to deserve it as the rest of the employees, right? But for example, and that is something very common when, and it happens to me, it still happens to me, and a lot of women, when you're talking, somebody, especially a man, they interrupt us. It's
mm,
like, and they, so many times they are taking our idea away, right? Like,
mm,
it's like, yeah, yeah, Claudia, but as you mentioned, blah, 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 and people think it's their idea, right?
mm,
So for me, that is not respecting myself or any other person. So it's a very small change. Let the other people talk. And
mm,
that's it. And especially as a woman, it's not like we need help, right? Please don't misunderstand. As a woman, we don't need help or that somebody else say, Claudia, please speak because you haven't. No, I don't need that. I can talk by myself. I don't need any
mhm,
help to do that. But please respect when I'm speaking, right? Because there's a lot of that. There is more. You can think that it's very small. No, it's a very important detail to
mm,
respect everybody else, right? To give their own place to every single woman that is in a meeting, etc., and not to repeat this kind of behaviors,
mm,
right? Because it happens a lot. I have seen that a lot. So
mm,
for me, it's only not big changes, but small ones as well.
right.
Yep. Tanya, did you have a question?
No, but I wanted to add a comment to that because I think I've experienced that as well. I think it is a common issue. And I think leaders and people, whether you're a manager or not, um, have to make space for each other, right? And allow folks, because not everybody will have the same temperament as well. Not all women will feel comfortable speaking out in an assertive way, and that's okay. But allowing that space and for folks to read the energy of the room so that when you see that happening where people aren't being respected or interrupted, that you take a step to divert that and to put focus back on the person who is speaking. I think it's a simple thing to do, hard to practice, and so building that muscle around it is key. So.
Yeah, and to add to that, I'll give you the outside in kind of a view, right? Which is, I, as a male leader at a table, so many times I've seen the same thing, right?
Mm,
A female leader says something, it's brushed aside, and another male leader says the same thing in different words, and it's like, oh, that is a great idea. And it took a while for me to even figure out what to do.
mm,
I mean, I just was like, okay, that's kind of odd. And everybody brushes it off and walks away right into the sunset. More recently, I've started doing is like, that's exactly what she said. Literally saying that, right? It's
mm,
awkward,
right.
but it is a very important thing to give credit where it's due.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're not. It's like silence is complicit.
Right.
That's how I see it, right? It's
Right.
like you can't just brush it aside. So
Right.
the more of us, whomsoever listens to this, that goes in and sees something like this happen, and unfortunately you will still continue to see it in some way, shape, or form, is just don't take the credit, don't highlight the problem, but you can do all of that in one sentence by saying that is exactly what she said,
Mm-hmm.
right? And give credit back to the lady in the room. Sorry, I just want to make that comment quickly as well.
No, and I fully agree with you because that's another important step, Umesh, to to recognize whoever is speaking, whoever is talking, and also to be like a sponsor of some other women. Because, for
Mm,
example, here in Mexico, we have like this pejorative way to refer to some women, right? Like
mm,
this, it's like an old lady, but in Spanish it's
mm,
like this vieja, right? So
mm-hmm.
it's like this this woman she's talking about, etc. No, to the other side, if you respect myself, if you respect my criteria, my opinion, please speak well about myself,
Mm,
Again, if I have to, oh, I have been working with Tanya for so long, and she's so good at what she's doing, right?
mm,
Instead of Tanya, this lady, because she's like, etc., etc.
right.
Because I haven't heard a lot of men, I have to say, talking or speaking good about women, in
Mm,
particular, so many women, and to recognize the work we are doing.
mm,
Again, it's not like we need that, but it's like an example, right?
right.
To go further. To what do
Right.
you need to do? What you may do? This. You can recognize your colleagues.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Yeah, indeed, completely agree. Um, and I loved what you just said. It doesn't even sponsoring a woman doesn't have to be about sponsoring big things. It's about even sponsoring the conversation,
Mm,
right? It's like creating a safe space, sponsoring that safe space, and creating that safe space is as important, if not more important. It's
right.
something tangible that everybody can do.
Mhm.
Completely agree on that. Sorry, Tanya, did you have something?
Oh no, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm agreeing. I'm
No, no,
a
okay,
lot of
sorry.
good things.
Um, we talked um, about this in general um, about the stereotype, right? And how women are put into stereotypes. And we also talked about how it's almost sometimes gender neutral. And you can say for most immigrants, right? We tend to put people in boxes, right? In your journey, I'm sure you were put in multiple boxes that you've had to break out of, right? Um, how did you break out of them? If there's some things that you kind of learned that you can share with the audience, that's one. And two, what are some of those horror stories, right? What were some of those struggles that you really had to fight to make happen? What were the heavy lifts?
Yeah, well, about the stereotypes, I think a lot of strong women, because Tanya mentioned, we don't have the same temper, all of us. I have to build my temper because of my career, because of the position I have had in so many companies. I need to be clear, I need to be direct, I need to be firm. So that temper my character aside, the way I am now. But sometimes it's difficult because men may say, if a man is firm and direct, he's a leader, right? If a woman is firm as direct, she's hysterical, right?
Mm.
So it's a little bit different. It's a little bit complicated to say, I'm not hysterical. I'm just saying what I have to say and what I need to say, right? But if we have that kind of a stereotype that, oh my God, she has so bad temper. She's maybe not married because who wants to marry a girl like that, right? I have heard that comments a lot, and I'm married twice. So even my temper, I have been married twice. So that's not the issue, right? I mean, the issue is the way the men express themselves about a woman when she's strong, right? So I have to deal with that. I'm very corporate as well. I'm very kind of serious when I perform my job because I have learned that people, especially with the lawyer, they think because you are friendly or
Mm.
because you are close, they can have some advantages, right? Or in the other side. I went to Cisco Life in Cancun like 4 years ago, and I was dancing with my colleagues because that's what you do at Cisco Life. You
Yeah.
also
Mm-hmm.
dance, you work, but you also dance and get
Mm-hmm.
party, etc. When I returned to Mexico, the first comment I received, it was on Friday, Cisco Live end of Friday, and went on Monday to the office, and I received a comment from a man. So, Claudia, I saw you dancing there at Cisco Live, eh? And I was like, yes, and what is wrong with that? Oh no,
Mm-hmm.
because you're the lawyer, you're so corporate, you're so serious. But I'm human, and I like to
Yes.
party as well, right? And that's it. I mean, but those kind of stereotypes that you need to be lawyer all the time, or that you're hysterical, or that you're aggressive because you're direct,
Mm,
etc., etc. I don't like to justify myself. I don't have to. I'm the way I am, and that's it,
right.
right? So I don't have to apologize. I don't want to say, no, I'm dancing because I like to. No, I'm dancing because I want to dance, and that's it,
Mm-hmm.
right? So, but so many times we are compelled to provide explanations because of
Yes.
the way we are, of the way we behave, etc., etc. So it has been a tough journey, I have to say, because I have
Mm-hmm.
learned to do that, not to justify myself, not to explain the way I am, not
Mm-hmm.
to apologize because I said something, not because, etc. So it has been tough, But I
Hmm.
have learned, I have to say, I have the best teachers ever, men. I have learned a lot of them because they are very pragmatic, they are very practical, they don't
Mhm.
take anything personal,
Mm.
or at least they fake, they don't take it personal, but they don't take it personal, right? They are not like, so am I going to say this in the staff meeting? But no, they go and speak, and believe me, I have heard so many crazy ideas for putting in a friendly way. And I
Mm.
said, how did he uh, said that in a meeting,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
Because if I say something like that, everybody else would be laughing about me. But
Mm.
because a man said that, it was like funny, etc., etc. So I decided to be bold, to take a step, and to say, if I have to say something, I'm not going to question myself 100 times it's correct, and I'm going to say it good in a very good way. Is that political correct, etc., etc.? No, I'm going to say what I'm thinking,
Mm.
and that's it, right? But I have learned a lot from men. I have to say that.
I think it's what's powerful about what you just said, Claudia, is it's people have it's important to recognize that folks do go through that cycle of thinking where my social capital may not allow me to say something that another, like a male, could, right?
Hmm.
And so when people are forming perceptions about people on their team and who contributes, especially when it's you have not a diverse team and there's a woman who may feel like they're representing all of womankind in your meeting. It's important for leaders to recognize that if they don't say something, there could be that underlying current that maybe they feel like if they do, it's too much on the line for them, right? So then it's on the onus of leaders and your teammates to reach out to that person to understand their perspective on what happened in the meeting or what happens, in the day to day. Because just because someone doesn't say something doesn't mean that they aren't thinking of, a great solution or, they have a separate opinion of something. But the dynamics of the team and the environment may not allow for them to do that. So
Yeah,
really
I
important.
completely agree.
Circling back to your leadership within Women of Cisco, right? And um, one of the things that we've discovered, through MFI is that maybe sometimes men feel like they may not have a place within Women of Cisco, or so maybe you could talk a little bit about that. What's your perspective on that? Because I think MFI strives to message that we cannot change the culture without men. We have to have everyone involved on the effort. So the role of men in supporting Women of Cisco, how do you see that?
You have a great question, Tanya, actually, because that is so true. We have received so many comments about men saying, I don't feel like I pertain to Women of Cisco because you're so women focused, right? But that is true and it's not true.
Mm.
It's true because we are devoted to develop women, right?
Hmm.
So it's a different perspective. But
Mhm.
at the same time, and as you mentioned, we need men to do that. We need men to change the culture, the vision, etc. So we have like six men enrolled into Women of Cisco Mexico, and they participate in every single event we have. And they always speak, they always say their opinion, etc. And I love that. I always thank to them for attending, right?
Mm.
But we need to have more men
Mm.
involved in this. And even I'm not trying to change the vision of Women of Cisco because I
Right.
cannot, but we're trying to be more inclusive with them
Mm.
actually because that's a mistake we sometimes fall into, right? We
Mm.
are just women and this is the club of women and there's no men. No, that is not right because we need men to learn from them as well.
Mm.
They need to learn from us. They need to have this interaction with women as well, so they can know how do we think. It's difficult, I know, but maybe they have like a hint of how do we think, how do we interact, how they
Right.
can help this change, right, of
Mm.
culture, of this vision, etc., etc. So for example, when we have speakers, we have this he speaks every cue. So we have men and women. So what we are trying to do is not only touching issues about exclusively women, but about your emotional intelligence, your
Mm,
skills, topics that are interesting for everybody, not only
mhm.
for women. But we have a lot of things to do here. You're right.
Right. I love that it's the intention, as with other EROs and networks, right? The intention is to uplift and provide support for your community, in this case, women, right? But that doesn't mean that allies and folks who want to support can't be a part of that conversation, as you said, and learn. It's a gift to be able to get those insights and have that proximity with those communities. So that's great.
So, would you, so to the six men who are part of Women of Cisco, what are they doing differently that you see is helping the overall cause? And this is me like spitballing a question, right? Because I'm very curious, right? I- I'll give you my context too. One story is I went to Watermark conference 3 years ago.
Mm.
I was one of three men in an audience of 10,000. Oh my God, was the moment, right? Is like I remember a colleague of mine, she came to me and she was like, she literally grabbed me. I was on the side like this with a phone, waiting for the sea of women to walk out. And I was like, I'm gonna wait for everybody to leave before I walk, right? And she literally came, she grabbed me by the hand, she put her hand on my hand, and she just dragged me. She was like, now I know how I feel.
Mm,
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, and I'm saying that story because it felt very different, right? I was
mm,
like, I'm a confident individual in general, but all of that just completely shattered, right, when I walked into
mm,
that conference, and it was just a day. Uh, but I'm trying to give that context because those six men potentially are doing something different, right? They're going through something different, but they're also trying to create more of them. What are they doing that is different?
I think the most important thing is that they pertain to women of Cisco. They don't care about what other men may think because
Mm,
they are part of women of Cisco, right?
yeah.
They
mm,
are breaking these stereotypes. Know that yes,
mm,
I'm part of women of Cisco and I'm going to all events. I'm open to hear what this group has to say, right? I'm open to learn from women. So, and I decide to participate. And as mentioned, in many of our events, they participate. They actively participate in this. So they have a voice as well. And they say, for example, in the executive, they go also to the executive breakfast. That it's
Hmm.
important because
mm,
we are like 9 women and 1 man and the executive, right? So, and they participate. And I love that because they are not afraid to be the only man in the room,
mm,
which is for a change, right? So I think what they are different is to speak about women of Cisco as well. They are
mm,
our sponsors somehow. They are our sponsors, right?
mhm,
Because they are saying they are doing this, they have these initiatives, I want to participate, etc., etc. And we have also leaders. We have, for example, Max Tremp, who is the
mm,
director of LATAM Engineering. So he's a very, very good sponsor, very open about talking women of Cisco, etc., etc. So I think the most important thing again is that they are open to pertain to this group.
mm,
Yeah,
mm.
and shameless plug for Max Trump is he gets it. Right.
Yeah.
Like I've had a
I love
handful of
him.
conversations. He totally gets it. Yeah, totally understand. And to summarize what he just said, what the gentlemen are doing is they participate, they learn, they're open to learning, they support at every step, and they're okay being the only man in the room. So I'm trying to like summarize that so that everybody gets it, and we put it in the slides here too.
Mm,
But that is very important that if you're trying to be a male who is an ally to changing the domain and the ecosystem, those four are so well put.
mhm.
So Claudia, thank you so much for putting that together. That's very nicely said. So the last question, like drum roll, right? Is it's a question we're asking everybody who comes in on the show, which is what are the three tangible, actionable things that you would like to suggest to anyone who's listening who can to make them a better ally for diversity and inclusion?
I think the first one is to be truly genuine, because again, as we mentioned and as we talk about this, there's a lot of men that are speaking about the inclusion and diversity and gender equality, but they are not doing anything at all. So be genuine. If you are not convinced of what you're saying, don't say it and stay like that, raw. Because otherwise, it's confusing for us as women to say he's supporting or not because he's saying this, but in his team there's no women at all. He doesn't like women to speak, etc., etc. So it's a little bit confusing, those signals. Second, be respectful. I think that's it's very important. It's not only for women but for everybody else. But respect, I think it's a very important value, right? Of an honest culture and inclusive and an inclusive culture to be respect to about the women, what they are saying, the way they are expressing themselves, the way they are, the way they look as well, right? And for the third one, I think be a sponsor of a woman. Again, you don't need to promote her career or to give her a raise. No, be the sponsor, pick one or two, and talk good things about her. If you are convinced that she's doing a good job, that she has a good personality, that she has a added value, no. So be a sponsor of her, or two or three or whatever you want, but demonstrate that you are a true ally of a woman, at least one.
Yeah, love that. It's demonstrate you're an actual ally, at least through one action, right? Is there's you just nailed it, which is there's so many people saying show that what you're saying makes perfect sense because you believe in it through some sort of action. Um, three things I saw there was one, be genuine, two, be respectful, three, be a sponsor at any level, right? It doesn't have to be a big thing, even if it's a small thing, even if it's you connecting a a woman with somebody else within or outside the organization, that is still a sponsorship moment that you can do.
You perfectly said it. Exactly. That's the idea, Umesh.
Awesome. Perfect. Claudia, again, thank you so much. Phenomenal experience again having you on this. And thank you for supporting us too, right? This is a whole new initiative for Men for Inclusion. And we love having you on the show. And we're looking forward to like maybe better interlock between Women Cisco and Men for Inclusion as well as we go into net new horizons.
Thanks to you, Umesh and Tanya, for the opportunity, and thanks to Men for Inclusion for supporting us as women. I think we are starting a very, very good opportunity to work together and to create more changes and a lot of new stuff.